Marius Jurgilas.
There we go, Marius Jurgilas.
I'm
See,
sorry.
I didn't want to screw it up.
I knew it was Marius, but I'm sorry, Jurgilas didn't come.
Pleasure to have you. Pleasure. See, I didn't want to mess his last name up, and I wasn't sure. Thanks, Jeff, for being a sport. So, yes, you can sit here. Yeah, perfect. And you are a central banker.
Just Marius.
Just Marius. He's a cool central banker. He's like the best dressed central banker I've ever seen. He doesn't look as stiff as all the ones in America.
I can look as stiff as you want.
I love this already. This is going to be good. So,
Right.
so welcome down. We're going to, how much of your time do we have? Because I know your schedule got tweaked a little bit. We have about 20 minutes?
I don't know. I noticed you had a gong, so we follow the gong.
Okay, we go. We go with the gong. All right, so when we get gonged, we're done. But you've made some statements that I'm going to just quote one because we're going to just start off. But we're going to have fun together, and you can answer what you want and don't answer what you don't want, and we'll be as respectful as we can. But we do want to understand how, as a startup community, as an investment community, both not in Lithuania, but also maybe for the rest of the world, how we could build bridges between the regulatory and the tough job that you have. Also understanding that there's a status quo that the banking industry wants to maintain that is potentially threatened by aspects of cryptocurrency, and we're all well aware of that. And so we can all see through that lens. But at the same time, there's more good to be happening if we can figure out where that middle ground is than bad. And so we'll ask you some questions, and hopefully we'll have a deep dialogue on your perspective, both personally, and you can disclaim what you say personally versus whatever the bank is saying. But there's a statement, I'm going to read it just because I want to make sure I get it right and quote you right. Back in October, you said, virtual currency is an instrument involving high risk, while profiteering on it may lead to significant losses of funds. Therefore, in order to protect the customers of financial institutions legally operating in our country, meaning Lithuania, and supervised by the Bank of Lithuania, must strictly disassociate themselves from this product type in their activities. An illusion that virtual currencies are supervised or safe can in no way be created, says Marius Jurgilas, member of the board of Bank of Lithuania. Now, how much of that statement, I don't want to say is still true. I want to say we understand why that statement was made, but what's the other side of that statement, or is there no other side? Because the challenge you have is Bankera, one of your most successful, 151 million-ish raised, is also a company that you've had to audit, look into, and make sure things were appropriate as it related to their ICO. They potentially are a competitive threat to the banking industry in general, and yet $151 million into a company in this ecosystem can employ a lot of people and create that spillover effect over time that we also just discussed. So what is your perspective on your role? What are your challenges? Start wherever you want, and let's see if we can help you help us.
Right. So probably it's very hard for me to disassociate from the official position, so I'll just follow that.
That's fine.
Because I'm the official of the institution which I'm representing, which is the Bank of Lithuania, which is the supervisor in the central bank and the financial market regulator in Lithuania. So the statement that you read is just one part of a statement, and it primarily relates to this logic or philosophy that if I give you the license to deal in central bank money, that's the license you deal in. Yep. If you want to deal in apples or frozen fish, there are other non-regulated financial institutions which you can become.
Gotcha.
And
so it's very specific
we all know
to the people you gave the license to.
No, we all know that banks is a really risky business, and sometimes they fail. Yep. Bar the crypto risks which are there. Mm-hmm. So the position that you quoted in human language means.
I love that.
In human language, it means, look. I don't want to see any risks from crypto assets exposure seeping into your activity. Yep. If you want to service, and that's the other part which you didn't quote, if you want to service as a financial institution, those who are dealing in fried fish or frozen fish, that's fine. Okay. You can do that, but don't yourself start frying fish.
Got it. So really, and thank you for that clarification. So what I heard was, if you're licensed by us and we're regulating you, i.e. you're part of our banking system, then stick to what you know. Right. But it was not a statement, although it could be interpreted by some as one, but you're clarifying that for us. It was not a statement that was, this is bad or wrong. It was just saying that's not what we regulate or what we do. Mm-hmm. And so what is the way that Lithuania or even the Bank of Lithuania, what role do you have to play on helping enable blockchain and cryptocurrency, specifically maybe the cryptocurrency side that isn't just blockchain for enterprise, to cause this new growth in the market and in the region, and at the same time keep checks and balances? Because in your market, my understanding, and I could be wrong, is that your role is a little bit more expanded than, let's say, the Fed's role over in the States, where you actually do regulate some of the security stuff here as well as the banking, correct?
So yes, we are the SEC in Lithuania.
You are so you kind of play two roles,
Right.
comparatively.
So we really have to weigh the pros and cons of any legislation which we impose, or not legislation, which like regulatory view that we impose, and focusing on this new emerging market of crypto assets or crypto tokens. Okay, let's say it's crypto assets.
Yeah.
Right? They are. Then the question is, why did they arise? Why do we have them? Is that just trying to circumvent the regulation which we put in place? Mm-hmm. And there are good reasons why those regulations are in place. It's for the protection of the general consumers, investors, prevention of fraud. That's why we have them. There is a reason why we pushed the trading of derivatives on regulated exchanges. It's not because we wanted to do that. Well, we realized the repercussions of a global financial crisis and the exposures that no one knew who's exposed to what, and clearing everything through one multilateral exchange is providing a better view from a systemic risk perspective. Now, coming back to crypto assets and more specifically the initial coin offerings, the second part of the Bank of Lithuania position was relating to the ICOs. It says, look, if it looks like security, it is a security, right? And that's nothing new. And in my personal view, 99% of those who are dealing in issuance of ICOs, they basically are providing the promise to the consumer of some financial gain in the future, and therefore it's not a consumer, he's an investor.
Is that because of the implication of why someone buys it versus the reality of what that company's trying to do? And I mean that in the sense of a lot of companies have in their business model created a utility for the token, but because of the thirst and the appetite by, call it, the investor class that is not only global but around, even though that may be designed and actually is a utility inside the business model they've generated, the treatment of it by the people that aren't in the company is speculative, and your assessment of it being a security regardless do you believe it's because the company thinks that, or do you believe it's because the market forces are treating it that way today because of the market forces being what they are and people's greed and ignorance versus the reality of the company actually really having a utility token and needing, because there has to be some leash given. Most of these companies are inventing stuff that, quite frankly, none of us fully know what it even is yet. And there has to be some leash given to see what it is. And at the same time, you've got to do your job and create systemic protection from a risk level for the current financial system. So it's not an easy job.
So I apply a very simple test myself when I look at those things. If we would strip the secondary market element from that token, very specific one, which claims to be utility token, and there is no possibility of a secondary market. It's basically a voucher or which you can redeem for the services or the product of a company that will provide in the future. And there's no other way of getting out of that. Will it be interesting for the general mass of the people who are investing in that ICO? If the answer is no, that's not a utility token. People investing are in that utility token because of the secondary market possibilities. And that is exactly the thing which is attractive to those who are doing those ICOs, because that's how they gain liquidity, or that's the liquidity which they promise to the investors, and which is not a bad thing, which is actually a very interesting thing from a capital markets perspective in Lithuania, which is really rudimentary. So going to the positives, right? It's a very fantastic thing that innovative firms, if let's say there are some, now they are not stuck on a plane flying to Silicon Valley and going from meeting to meeting, trying to convince that their idea to fly to the moon is really legit. No, it's the other way around. They're just posting their idea and people believe in it, and there's liquidity for that, and investors invest and can trade their shares. Mm-hmm. But why they're not going the usual route?
Well, we know why.
Well, we know why.
The usual route is constrained and chokeholded and inaccessible to people outside.
Why is it constrained and choked and inaccessible?
Because there becomes this much gathers more effect. For instance, if I've got a company that
why we don't allow a General Joe to invest in investment fund?
Yeah, so the retail investor, I agree with the accredited person versus the unaccredited. That's a different thing. That's a level of systemic risk you have to protect and you have to think about because the awareness isn't there. And when it becomes a secondary market trading and you can get people who are borrowing money to invest in ICOs, that's not good, right? And you can't stop that by saying don't do it because people are people and they're going to do what they think is going to get them rich. And we know that. So I personally, again, agree with that layer of we need to do that. But the reality is that the reason why Silicon Valley and those things work and why it's constrained is because I've written checks. I've written 42 investor checks into startups. And what I should have done is I should have burned them before I handed them to the person. Can anyone who's invested in stuff relate to taking early stage seed round risk and not having it go your way? Right? I suck at angel investing, but what I realized is I don't just suck at angel investing. Angel investing is broken because when you aren't in a market like Silicon Valley where I could walk them into Jeff's office and then they could get a seed round, but know that right after that seed round, if they hit metrics, they could get walked into Draper's office or into Sequoia and they could go get their A or B. Right? What happens is if I'm in Walla Walla, Washington, where this one company is recently, or I'm in Vilnius, Lithuania, I got a great idea. If my idea gets knocked off in a Silicon Valley has a roadmap to their next 3 rounds of $30 million over a 5-year period. My person doesn't. So the innovation gets stalled because the early stage investor takes all the risk, and God forbid it actually works and attracts money, they get crammed down and diluted to a point where there's no ROI, so they don't keep doing it. And so it's broken at a fundamental liquidity level. ICOs have cracked that liquidity problem, but created a secondary market risk that we have to somehow navigate collectively. So I think it's early days, and I think, again, the challenge is tough on all sides. How do you benefit from the secondary liquidity that's there? And at the same time, how does a regulator protect people from getting hammered?
I think it's an even deeper philosophical question. Where is the line where this? I think it's really elusive. Where it's failed business, you really tried to create an electric car, and it looks like you'll go bankrupt, or it's a fraud.
Yeah.
Where's fraud? Where's failed business? Not trying to put it on the spot, but is Tesla fraud? Or looks like a failed business?
Depends on who you ask.
But either way you look at it, it really made an impact.
Sure.
It really pushed the BMWs and others
go
into the electric.
I will assert as a startup guy, I have never intentionally frauded anybody. But there have been times late at night where I've looked at the business that I had and went, this sucks. Now, I may be the only one, but I'm willing to be honest enough to say a lot of times entrepreneurs, Elon included, are 1 second, 1 decision, 1 check away from unintentionally becoming on the wrong side of that, even though their intention was never even remotely dark at all, simply because the market dynamics change against them at the wrong moment. And it's a tough thing because it's philosophical, and it's of whether you think all children are born good, i.e. Calvin or whatever, and Hobbes, right? It's Calvin and Hobbes. Are people inherently evil or are they inherently good? And there's 2 types of people. Some people think one, the other think the other, and it's not an easy answer.
In financial markets, we call it the price discovery process.
The what?
The price discovery process.
Discovery, okay.
Right? Is this a stock worth nothing, or it's a growth stock? But that's why information needs to be revealed to everyone in a regulated, transparent way. If you, the founder, realize it sucks, and you don't tell that to your investors, how does that look?
Well, I think there's, again, this is the challenge, right, is who the investors are. If those
It's
investors
normal
are
people, you know, who
institutional
believe- it's
people,
normal
they're probably
people who
telling you
believed
it
in you.
sucks. And they're going, look, it sucks, and either you're going to get fired or you're going to fix it this way, but
Well, you know-
you've got 6 weeks, and then something good happens, right?
No,
They
let's
swap out management.
put you on the spot. No, what are you risking when your company sucks? You're risking someone else's money.
Well, I would, okay, so yes, but I'm going to put on the hat of the entrepreneur, and then I know you're dying to say something. Yeah. The entrepreneur is the gladiator. They're risking their life. They're risking far more than anyone else is willing to risk, and that's why there's so few of them. And I'm not idealizing the entrepreneur, because when I became an entrepreneur, it wasn't a thing, and it was 1999. It was means you couldn't get a job, and no one really thought, like, you didn't have a job. People just thought you weren't anybody. Now entrepreneurship has things like Startup Europe, and it's this cool thing, and kids are supposed to become it. And it's a trend, right? And that'll fade out too, because it'll get really painful. Entrepreneurship is a very DNA level thing, in my opinion. It is not something someone chooses, it's something that chooses you, and you uncover that you are built for pain, period. Because there's no glamour in entrepreneurship unless you are Elon. But until you're Elon, and even he's admitted that, it sucks, right? So the risk is you're trading your life, you're trading your credibility every day, and you're trading it on, and you're responsible for thousands of lives or hundreds of lives because people rely on you to eat, and you lose sleep over other people. So yes, I agree with you that yes, you're risking other people's money potentially, but you're also risking your life for the sake of hopefully other people having comfort in life and a job to go to.
I fully agree with you. So don't misinterpret me or.
No, I'm not. I'm saying I think that's what the entrepreneurs are thinking.
So don't.
I got the.
I don't want to be coming across as a person who says, entrepreneurship is a bad thing.
No, I don't think you are.
The opposite. The opposite.
Yeah, I agree.
So regulation is there to put the line and say, look, this is an entrepreneur who really tried and he failed. And failure is a good thing.
Yeah, it is.
Failure is fine. What is really hard to sell in a community like Lithuania, that failing is okay. If you tried and you failed. What is really bad is if you didn't try, you pretended that you're trying, you fly to Bahamas and you try.
So I want to say one more thing on this, and then Jeff, I want you to talk. So the last thing I'll say on that is, I agree with you too. I think regulation is good. I think constraints in the market, I think winter is good because the real entrepreneurs get a chance to actually show the real entrepreneurs. The best thing about me not having access to capital in 1999 is between 99 and 2002, I only lost $500,000 on a dog shit idea. Why? Because that's all I could get access to. If I had access to $1.5 million, guess what? I would have been $1.5 million in debt. Not because I was buying Lambos or stuff, but because I didn't know what I didn't know, and I made decisions, and they cost money. So constraints to capital are not bad either.
Fantastic.
And I worry about $30 million into a startup when they have 3 people because it's too easy, even if you're responsible, to waste. So I can give you
another example. I fully agree with you, and we can continue.
Jeff's so patient.
If you give a startup too much money, it's not going to end up well.
Right, I agree.
So increasing access to finance, broadly speaking, might fire back. And that's what happened in some jurisdictions where, for one or another reason, the government said, we need to jumpstart A or B industry and let's flood it with money. You know what happens next year? They ask for more.
Yep.
Well, yeah, I agree with both of your points, and from the entrepreneur's standpoint, if you're realistic, you're always going to have self-doubt. What entrepreneurs have to live with is sort of deep understanding and belief in themselves, and they have to be realistic in understanding that they're going to make some mistakes, and it doesn't mean that they are committing fraud with anybody. I feel like the regulation is valuable to some extent, but there needs to be a lot of room for given to, and that doesn't mean a lot of money necessarily, but a lot of room given to entrepreneurs to be able to question their own wisdom and make changes. That's how this whole idea of pivoting occurs. Is that you realize that what your original thought was maybe wasn't as good as you thought, and you have a chance to.
I want to build off of this, and I'm gonna give you a statement you can react to. I think regulators are worried about another '08. I think cryptocurrency will not be the cause of the next '08, which will be worse than the last one. The reason being, Wall Street created, for the last 30, 40 years, since 1971, basically starting with Nixon getting us off the gold standard and things like that officially, Wall Street manufactured the tech bubble. And it worked for tech creation, and it created wealth and where it created wealth. When that blew up, we could move it. So we moved it to, and Wall Street did this. Wall Street created it, and along with the government, and said everyone should own a home, and they moved it into the real estate, which started in America, but then obviously, as we all know, propagated through derivatives and everything else around the world. Wall Street created that. Entrepreneurs did not. That bubble forced us, if no one's read the Everything Bubble, you should read that, Graham Summers. That forced us into now where sovereign bonds, sovereign debt are actually the money. And so now the real risk is everything asset class is in a bubble that is traditional. Cryptos, argue whether they're in a bubble or not. The point is whether you think it's a bubble or whether you think it's the pin, the reality is cryptos the last 18 months have skyrocketed, as we all know. But they're still a fraction of the thing. But here's the thing that's interesting. Wall Street didn't create them. Wall Street just now is starting to enter. I'm not sure, but I'm throwing out a statement. I'm not saying I believe this is fact. I'm throwing out a statement so you can react to it, and I like that you already did. If Wall Street didn't create it, and Wall Street's now entering it, what's the real risk? Because to me, the real risk isn't, and I'm not saying we shouldn't protect consumers. I'm saying, to Jeff's point, there can be a bigger leash, because unless there's things that we don't know about that are happening, which there might be, where there's institutional derivatization already of cryptos at a scale that could cause systemic risk in the current system, then whatever gets lost over here in cryptos is fractional compared to what's going to get nuked when the banking system finally fails under its own weight. And at least if the crypto system is at a certain level of growth, then everyone can migrate to it and the economies of the world can keep going and kickstart. So react to that from your perspective.
So it's very easy, I think. So I would summarize the question.
Yes.
Where is the risk? Let me put it in perspective. Where was the risk of everyone flooding to the tech industry 15 years ago? Where was the risk? The risk was that all of a sudden everyone is diverting resources from other types of activities to something which relies in nothing. Yes?
You mean like manufacturing or job creation in those sectors, or what do you mean?
Any activity, could be, creating a crypto community back then.
Okay.
Right? Then the financial bubble of leading to the financial crisis. What did that create? It diverted also all the capacity, human capacity and capital capacity to creation of exuberant financial risk-taking. And those cryptologists which went to work into the investment banking industry, they could have created something better, which maybe they're doing right now. But we are just delayed by 15 years, right? And what is the risk right now with the crypto assets? It's again, if we give a false premise to people that this is the new gold, and everyone floods to that and starts, devoting their productive time to this particular activity, which is another diversion of assets. From a macroeconomic perspective, we always, if people want to take risks, they take those risks and they understand the risks they're taking, there's absolutely no problem. The problem is if the risks are misrepresented. The problem is if a company is sold for gold and the founder thinks it's shit.
Sure. But I also think that they think that they've been sold a bag of shit by people that say they're going to create jobs or bring jobs back in a world that no longer needs jobs at the level it did in those regards and isn't tooled up, isn't skilled up educationally. And why you have a tough job is because, yes, we have to protect end users, consumers that are not accredited investors, but the reality is, why are they wanting to buy ICOs? Because there's no other place for them to make money. They're Ubering, they're taxifying, and they're making peanuts, and everyone I Uber with says the same thing. I like it because I make my own schedule, but they're all broke, right? And so, yes, if I could buy into cryptos because now all of a sudden someone gave me access, I'm not saying it's right. I'm saying their risk is already nil. They see their opportunity and their income going like this. They see their real estate, even in, I'm staying in Tallinn, Estonia this summer and flying back and forth. And it's beautiful. I can't believe the price of housing compared to the price of incomes. It's scaling beyond America. And we've done a lot of things wrong in that regard. So the risk is that the gold that we think is gold isn't gold anyway. Like, I'm not saying gold as a physical, I'm just saying that right now, what's the other answer? And so I don't have the answer. What I'm saying is, I think what we're all trying to navigate is this world where the mass amount of the world, 60% of the world, is not doing better than they were a generation ago. Yet we've got better technology than we've ever had. We've got access to 3 billion customers, producers, distributors that have one of these that 15 years ago, the president didn't have access to the amount of information that's now in the hand of someone in a place with no running water. We have more opportunity than we have risk, but we've got to unlock it. And I think that's what you're getting at is the risk is we still rely on 300 million Americans to consume more than any other country and the Chinese to make it all. That's risk. What's not risky, my opinion, totally my opinion, is finding a way to get 3 billion people that are unbanked in the damn system.
Yeah.
Do we need the crypto community for that?
What else is going to get us there?
Well, Central Bank of India opening up its financial infrastructure to the PSPs and creating wallets
I'm not
for
familiar
everyone.
with that, so I'm not familiar with that. But
Central Bank of Mexico creating electronic accounts for everyone. That's changing
have
the
they done
world.
that?
That is really changing the world. That's really creating the scale and impact.
okay.
To me, crypto community, which is doing great things, I think, but it's like Elon for the automobile industry.
Mm-hmm.
It's making headlines, it's attracting a lot of attention, but if you look at the capitalization of Tesla versus the other companies, that's really making just a dink.
You got one more comment? I want to give him one more before we get gonged.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
You sure?
Yeah.
I want one statement for you because you've been taking some heat. So why do you get out of bed every morning and fight the fight you're fighting? It seems like to me, but I don't want to put words in your mouth beyond that you actually believe you can be part of the solution. But in your words, as we wrap up before the gong hits, why do you get out of bed every morning? What's your hope for your effort 5 years from now? What do you want to look back on and say you were part of enabling?
So I agree with you that in the future, we probably will not be earning wage and working long hours. We'll be participating in global community through financial markets. We have to do that. And some parts of the world are really not doing that, and they will be underserved, underprovided. So I want to create the trust in financial system which is there. And I fear that if the regulators allow it to go the way it's going right now, bad people will take over it. And a good idea will be sabotaged.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That was great. Appreciate it. Give him a hand, guys.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.